Let me bring you up to date then with the latest developments in this conflict. Israel's military says it's started a new wave of strikes on Iran, targeting regime infrastructure in Tehran and in Isfahan. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said several countries have begun mediation efforts to try and end the conflict, though he offered no detail. Posting on social media, US President Donald Trump said there would be no deal with Iran, calling instead for unconditional surrender, with a promise that the US and its allies would then work to rebuild the country. So how are people inside Iran coping with these attacks? 7 days into this war, that's increasingly hard to tell. An internet blackout across the country means it's almost impossible for Iranians to make their voices heard. Here are some images the regime wants the world to see. Its supporters attending a rally after Friday prayers in Tehran as Israel continues to pound the city with a new wave of airstrikes. Meanwhile, officials speaking on Iran state TV are threatening anyone who voices support for the Israeli and US attacks, saying the order for their execution has already been issued. Well, Negin Shiraghaei is an Iranian activist and entrepreneur. She's also founder director of the Azadi Network. That's a grassroots organization dedicated to elevating the voices of the marginalized groups in Iran. Welcome to DW. Can we first start with that threat from Iranian leaders, saying that anyone who voices support for the Israeli and US attacks, the order for their execution has already been issued. To us non-Iranians, that's quite chilling. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
There's no surprise for us Iranians because this is not something that we're not familiar with. We've been talking about this kind of atrocities that's happening by the Iranian regime for the last 47 years. The thing is, I really like your segment and then how you nuanced, reporting on both sides and then what's exactly happening. This has been the challenge for the people of Iran, majority of people of Iran, to be able to address adequately, put it out there for years, to say that this regime has this mandate that at the end of the day, for the cost doesn't matter. If the cost is the complete destruction of the country, if it means killing as many people as possible to stay in power. And that's the only mandate they understand. And that has been proven over and over to the Iranian population. We've seen the heights of that kind of killing on 8th and 9th of January, but this wasn't the only incident. It's been going on for years. Right. And the Iranian people, when the bombs and missiles are coming towards them, they're cheering, the situation. And it can be quite complex and surprising why they're doing that. But understanding that complexity behind the scene and what happened before, maybe that helps for people, listeners, to understand this dynamic as well.
Right. So, as you say, it's complicated because Iranian people are being bombed. Those bombs are raining down on people. But the aim is to overturn a regime that has been killing its own people. Have you been able to speak to people who are still there? We know that communication is difficult.
Yes, the communication is difficult, but we've been resilient, became more resilient throughout years. And especially right now, people are using the landlines to call, and which was something, they know they can easily be tracked and the government can understand what they say and track them. But people kind of pass that line of fear and they're publicly putting it out there, even though we've seen every night the Basijis are going down to the streets shouting and threatening people. We've seen that as well. People are waiting for some kind of regime change to happen. I don't think that was the aim of Trump, or is still, understanding what Trump wants or the aim of the war was from the beginning is complicated. But for people, at least, that message has been sent to the people inside Iran that the aim is regime change and we're going to continue until that happens. And people are waiting for that. Would this mean the cheerful mood that existed in the country on the first day and the second day of the war would continue to be the same. I don't think so. We're already seeing signs of people talking about this fear that is installed in them now. It's 7 days of bombing. It's day and night. They go to work and or like on the streets, or it can be, every war has random casualties.
Yes.
And you can be that. And it's mind-blowing that on the first day and the second day, you would hear people saying, I don't even care if the bomb kills me. At least they're going to go. And I think that sentiment is changing as well.
Understood. Donald Trump says he wants to be involved in picking Iran's next leader. So, again, from an outside perspective, let me ask you, is being ruled by an American puppet the sort of freedom Iranians would hope for?
No. So Iranians have this centuries of going against the Americans. The revolution that happened in Iran in 1979 was actually opposing the coup that happened in 1952 against the Iranian democratic leader at the time. So that tradition of seeking democracy is something that the Iranians have been, trying it decades over decades for more than 150 years. I don't think at the end of the day, Iranians would be happy with an American puppet, but in a long term. But in a short term, this has been something that I've heard over and over from activists or some, people who participate in the protest to say that, if the side effect of this attack is that we're going to get rid of this regime that we haven't been successful in getting rid of, that's good. And then we can build from there.
Okay.
That has been a kind of narrative that has been put out there by the propaganda machines as well.
Again, back to this complicated situation that you have there. Here in the West, the majority of the pictures and stories we see are of the regime brutally repressing its own people and of anti-regime protests. But we've also seen pictures of crowds of people in the streets weeping after the Ayatollah Khamenei was killed. Is it possible to assess how much support this regime actually has?
The polling over and over in decades for the last 47 years shows the Islamic Republic always had 15 to 20% hardcore supporters. These hardcore supporters, they don't change side. They're going to stay with Islamic Republic as long as it's in power. And I think now it's the moment that they got to that hardcore kind of support. There is no other gray area. There is no people who would support the reform in the government anymore or in the structure anymore. So, and this number has been coming out of polls in the last 2-3 years.
Right.
You see this 20%, 25% over and over repeating that this is the base for the regime. So every time something happens, they have, buses and cars picking up people and bringing them to the protest. And this has been going on for decades.
In the last minute of our interview, it's clear that the US doesn't have a firm plan about how this war will end. How much does that worry you?
It worries me a lot, and it worries me also that the democratic forces out there, Europe, in the EU, it is ridiculous that no one is standing up for democracy, and everyone is trying to avoid the complexity of the situation. And this is unfortunately the reality of the world we are living now. And from now on, we have to make that decision, especially in the democratic world, that where are we standing in regards to international law, in the leadership positions of democracy in the world, and do we want to take a stand or just be the observers of this new world that we're not going to play a role in it? And unfortunately, we only see the players as the Trump and that narrative, and there is no counter argument on the other side.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that so clearly, Negin Shiraghaei, activist and entrepreneur. Thank you so much.